Awesome. Well, it says it's recording, so I guess it's my turn. So welcome everyone today. Excited to definitely talk about this topic. It's something that, and not just multifamily, but, and when you think of multifamily, you've got obviously condos and that's going on for sure. But duplexes, single family that's going on, but they're row home single families that we just run into every day. And we definitely see it a lot more in the click applications for sure, but we also get the pressure, like Chris said, to get in and get out on the glue down too. So it's definitely something that I feel for us anyway. At Primco, we feel like it eats up probably 90 to 95% of our claims are due to just poor execution of product at this level for sure. So
unacceptable site conditions
for sure. So obviously, if you're talking about slabs for sure, moisture testing that goes into slabs. Here's a picture of some, adhesives that's been re-emulsified. And pardon me, I woke up with a cold late last week, and I'm still trying to shake it here a little bit. So if my voice is a little crackly, that's why. So, but
so this is gonna re-emulsify. Why?
With the water getting into the adhesive, it just doesn't give it time to set up. So it's even when it sets up, it just starts to break it down. So it's basically breaking it down because of the excessive moisture that's happening there, right? So then we're getting this re-emulsification of the adhesive, and it's it's bad for everyone, right? So you're going to have lifting, gapping, and everything else.
Interesting you bring this up. I was just recently on an inspection where the installation guidelines for the adhesive say do not wet the floor for the first 7 days after installation, because that 7 days is the curing time for the adhesive. If you do, it will, any water that comes into contact with the adhesive will re-emulsify it, basically turn it into emulsion paint, no bond. And so I'm walking into this floor space, and the LVT was, you could peel it up like, it was awful. The whole thing is like 2,000 square feet destroyed because they mopped it too soon, didn't read the instructions.
And the crazy part is, like you just said, it's in the instructions, right? So it's not even like it's some secret hidden way it's not some warranty claim hidden way down in some lawyer-esque type reading. I mean, it's just a matter of reading the instruction manual, right? So
yeah.
Then we also see an issue, on the click side, and we get a lot of this too, is with and I know firsthand, this is actually a picture taken from a distributor that we know down in the States, but this is caused by, this is actually cupped SPC due to excessive moisture. And basically what's happening is the moisture is sitting underneath there, and it's trying to pull it up through the weakest point, because you've got a waterproof product, the SPC, and the weakest point in this floor is the joints, just due to the matter, as the rest is a
so
plastic. So it's actually pulling it up because the moisture is rising to wherever the driest part is. So you've got 100% humidity underneath, which is the moisture, and then you've got a 30% or 35% in your home, or 20% in Western Canada, in Calgary now, when stuff whips through, and that water's pulling up through those joints, and it's actually causing this product to cup. And this is one that we were I was talking with another distributor down in the States that we're pretty friendly with, and they were explaining this huge complex that they were doing that was having this over a gypsum based underlay. And I know in Vancouver, I know of a project as well that's a multi-million-dollar claim just due to this issue, where the gypsum wasn't totally dry, and they put it over, and it ended up causing issues with the click. So
they put a floating SPC over gypsum that wasn't yet dry, and it cupped.
Yeah, and well, and I think the biggest thing is, this one was funny, because when I talked to the sales manager down here, the first thing they said, well, it's waterproof, which the product is waterproof, but the problem is that it's pulling it up, and it's causing it to cup, because it's just how do I want to say it? It's the laws of physics, right? Where it's pulling that water up, and it's causing it to peak just because of that. So
is the core waterproof?
The core is water. Yeah, the core on the SPC is, in most cases is, most manufacturers claim it as waterproof, and we do as well. But as much as this is an SPC, this could happen in the waterproof laminate world that we're living in now, or any of these waterproof flooring that we're living in now. That doesn't mean that you can't. That doesn't mean that you don't prep the surface properly and make sure that the moisture that you fix the moisture problem that's in that slab or in that gypsum subfloor, right? So
well, it's a real contradiction in terms, because SPC, which is standing for stone polymer composite, it's like a rigid LVT product. You read some of the manufacturer's installation guidelines, and they don't call for relative humidity to be measured. They don't mention it at all. You can put it in whatever you like.
yeah.
And temperature, they say from like -60 to +60, something ridiculous like that. And yet we see stuff like this happening. So you're a distributor. What is behind that? Why would they do that?
Well, I mean, they're measuring when they're doing the testing for the product. They're doing it in a in a lab situation, in a perfectly controlled room, and they're ramping the temperatures up and down. And it's not a real life test, right? And while this product had no moisture underneath, would probably still look as amazing as it went down. The problem with this is just the moisture that was underneath was being pulled up through those cracks because there was just too much moisture. So
so the manufacturer should say, take moisture tests, check the relative humidity, realize
the one thing we recommend, and I don't know if everybody does, but I would say, and whether it's recommended or not on any of the products, I would say on any sort of concrete or gypsum based subfloor, you should put a 6 mil poly at least minimum, or or I guess in the case of a laminate, if you're going to use a 3-in-1 where it's not attached. I think the biggest portion comes when you do an SPC, and most of the SPC sold in the market, I don't know what the number is, but I'm assuming it's in the high 90s or mid 90s of SPC with attached pad. The problem is that there's no moisture barrier there, right? So you need to add that poly in order to really, stop that moisture, any of that, any of those moisture, and kind of move it to the outside to allow it to escape out properly and deal with the problem, right? So
yeah.
So that's something we see, we're seeing more and more. It happens on the concrete and gypsum based, and actually we just ran into it. You were just asking me this before we kind of started about if I had run into any problems, and this wasn't our product, but it was based upon a conversation I had on Sunday with a retailer at a convention where they had actually had this happen on a crawl space product too. And just with the crawl space, to control the humidity in a crawl space is very hard. So, any of the people from BC that are on here that have a lot of older homes that are on crawls, it's another thing where it just, as much as you're supposed to. I lived in BC in Langley, and I can tell you for sure my crawl space, even though the code is you're supposed to have a vapor barrier in the crawl space, it wasn't there. I can tell you that for sure. So, when you're talking about something that's costing you $34 for 1,000 square foot roll, it's pretty easy insurance, right? So
yeah, cheap 6 mil poly is a class 1 perm rated moisture retarder, so that's what you should use in that case.
To recognize moisture testing, obviously you have the probe or you have the calcium chloride test, so you can use either of those, or a standard recognized concrete moisture testing. So make sure you go and get one of those. They're not overly expensive, especially the calcium chloride. So again, it's very easy insurance.
Follow the manufacturer's guidelines.
Exactly. We dealt with a claim here just 2 weeks ago, not on a commercially installed project, and one of the first ones, they were having it bubbling everywhere, and the first thing we asked them was what was the moisture testing, and lo and behold, there was no moisture testing done. So they were going to go and cut out a chunk of the flooring in the middle of a huge area and do a moisture test now. So
that was a glue down.
That was 2 weeks ago, and we haven't heard anything else. So I can only imagine what they found out, right? So
was that a glue down?
It was a glue down sheet vinyl, yes, yeah, and it was bubbling everywhere. So
yeah, disaster.
I can only imagine. all slabs are kind of proven, are wet until proven dry. So, leaking outside walls, dripping HVAC systems, pipes, plumbing issues, anything, right? So there's lots of stuff that can definitely make that slab wet. Funny enough, I was just on a holiday here for a week with my family up to BC. Came back and noticed that my water system in my home in my basement had the one cord or the one pipe had fallen off, and there was water, not much, but it was everywhere. And that was just over a week ago, and still this morning when I left home, I had to go downstairs to grab something out of the freezer, and the moisture was still wet in that slab. There was still moisture from just the littlest, half-inch leak, right? So it doesn't take much to put some sort of, external moisture back into that slab. So you just really need to check it and do the proper testing. So subfloor flatness, this is one that we get hit with a lot, and I think,
especially in multifamily, Tyler.
Especially in multifamily, and even more in multifamily with, people wanting to do loose lays over subfloors and trying to cut corners of maybe going over OSB and stuff like that. So you're definitely getting a lot more that way. We've got a lot of deflection floors that is happening. So, slab flatness is a key critical part. It is causing in the click business, it's causing a lot of, usually in the glue down, you don't hear about it so much, but on site, the actual finished product looks pretty bad because you're getting a bunch of undulated, glued down product that kind of has this ugly look. But in the click side, you don't see that. But what happens is over time, as you're walking over that product, you're ending up breaking those joints, especially on SPCs and stuff like that are so rigid and hard. They end up getting broken joints, and you have a lot of joint separation that's happening, and it's becoming a huge claim issue in the industry for sure on clicks with those locks being broken. So, and it usually has to do with either deflection or with subfloor flatness.
So based on your experience with multifamily and this being a major problem on just about every project, why is it, and how can you see this problem coming before you get to critical mass and the flooring is about to be delivered? What can you do to avert the problem?
Well, I think, testing your floor flatness and taking a look, and then just using some self-leveling. I think the biggest scare that, any of these multifamily have is they're usually set on a budget. They're usually working to the max of their budget, and then all of a sudden they realize, oh, we need to do a bunch of leveling, and we haven't included this in our budget costing. So instead of going the proper route of doing a bunch of subfloor leveling, they just hope and pray that the flooring will handle it. They lay the flooring down, and it looks good to begin with, and then obviously over months and time that pass, it becomes issues for the retailers and for the manufacturers and distributors like us.
So you experience if it's not properly specified, if it's not planned for months and months in advance, what you experience is flooring contractor going to site and installing anyway.
Yeah.
And when 100%. It fails, they phone you because apparently it's the product's fault.
It usually becomes the product fault. Yeah. And it ends up becoming, or even if they know it's not a product fault, it's usually, well, I'm a very good customer of yours, so how can you help me out, right? Or what can you do to help me out, right? Which in Primco, we usually, we're trying to work as best we can with our retailers, but in the long and the short of it, had we all just pushed back a little bit onto the end user, the GC, and done it properly, none of us would be out of pocket on this, right? So
yeah, part of the problem. Part of the problem is everybody gets a trophy, whether you're in first, second, or third place. It's or last. If you push back and say, sorry, no, if you're going to do that, don't come crying to me. It might change the habit over time.
I can say I'm very surprised, and this is more of this isn't a multifamily, but we did a showroom reno in our Calgary head office, and the flooring was installed down in one area right away, and very, very soon after, I got a call from Cam, our owner / president, about, he wasn't there. He was gone for a week, and he came back and looked at the floor looked beautiful, but there was a bunch of creaking happening, and what was going on. And I just said, well, I don't think the floor is flat by the sounds of what you're kind of explaining to me. It probably has some humps and bumps underneath. And so they pulled the floor up, and lo and behold, we were out about an inch in about 6 feet, not in 10 feet. So we used a bunch of Subfloor leveler and leveled the whole area.
And who paid for that?
Well, in this case, we covered it. Well, we didn't cover taking it back out because obviously the retailer had installed it and shouldn't have, but they took that out. But we ended up covering off we just knew, like, it's not good enough to preach if we're not going to practice, right? So we subfloored it, leveled it out. We did the same thing we just recently did a Saskatoon renovation as well, and we ground down the humps and leveled out the other parts and just got it level so that we were working on a proper, and some comments are obviously always made, just going, well, we could probably go over it, but I mean, probably in what happens in the long term, it's something that we don't want to be involved in, right? So,
well, if it's 100,000 square feet and it needs $2 a square foot to flatten it to meet manufacturer standards, if you're going to have that floated click product hold together for the next 10 years, who's going to afford that if you haven't planned it? It's 200 grand.
Yeah, 100. Yeah, and that's the problem that it's getting run into, and those corners are getting cut, and they're going, well, hey, just if you think you can put it down, can you patch it out for a quarter of that price, right? And that's where, and then it's coming back going, why is this coming apart now, right? So especially on the click products where we're seeing a lot of that happening, all over. I mean, I know of an area in Western Canada that has a whole bunch of issues with just floor flatness and a bunch of click that's come apart. That's going to be a huge multi-million-dollar issue that somebody's going to have to deal with because of just improperly, just not taking the extra time to put it down properly, right? Going over OSB subfloor and not even taking the time, whether even in some clicks are allowing you to go over that OSB subfloor, but just not even patching that out to at least make it flat, right? So
I think I think
concern.
part of the problem is this is a segment of the market that doesn't care about quality. The developer may be the owner. The developer just wants to build a zip code or a postal code and sell the suite. A lot of times, the common hallways won't be completed. It's not about quality. It's about getting it done so they can sell it and make, the 12% equity growth in that year of build. And so, you show up on site with a quality assurance program or the suggestion that they maybe use $200,000 worth of leveling, you're going to get laughed off site. And so if you're going to go into that environment and sell product, you got to go in with your Kevlar vest on, all ready for a fight, because you're not going to be able to stand behind your warranty. That's the first thing that's going to get pulled. So tough game, multifamily. Someone described it to me in Toronto as a pack of hyenas pouring concrete. It's really tough.
Yeah, it's a tough market, and I think you and I have talked about it before, and I've talked about it with other people. But I think there should be a day, and I hope there will be a day similar to what you're doing with commercial, with what NFCA is doing with commercial, where there is a quality insurance program that comes in, and it's like it covers these things, whether that's row homes or whether that's multifamily with condominiums or whatever, or townhouses or whatever it may be, because I think in most cases unfortunately the retailer is probably doing that builder's single family, and when it comes down to the multifamily, they're kind of at a point where they go, well, if I say no, am I going to lose all of the single family too? And in a lot of cases that if I look at Saskatoon, for instance, it's a big portion of a lot of retailers' business, right? So
a lot of times this is a
tough call to make, right? So
it's a situation that's perpetuated because a lot of the homeowners buy product that hasn't been built yet, so they don't know they bought a floor that looks like this.
And here's an example of where they just skim coated it out as best they could, and this is a prime example of what happens now. Luckily enough, I would say, as if I can say something that's lucky, this is this is a glue down product. If this were to be a click, this would be, you know, just destroyed. And this is what I talk about when the side of those clicks would just break. They're just breaking off. The ends are breaking off. You're getting this slapping and that's breaking off. And, you know, comment that it was made to me here just a little while ago was, well, yeah, we're going to start to use laminate, and hey, I'm all for laminate. There's no doubt about that's my big preach on an entry level product. But we're going to use laminate because it should go over the humps better, right? So, you know, but again, you know, you're not really solving that. You know, you're just kind of, again, slapping lipstick on a pig, if I want to use that example from my, you know, rural Saskatchewan background here. But it's you know,
how do you make it more rigid?
Yeah, can you make it thicker so I can go, you know? And we're also seeing that a big influx in thicker rigid product. You know, before the standard was, you know, we'd seen anywhere from 3.2 to 4.4 mil. You know, now we're seeing those 5.5 mil SPCs, or 6.5 when you add the pad. And you know, I think I would caution any retailers that are on this webinar here, or listen to this in the future, that, you know, if you talk to the guys, and I know on our podcast we had Ben Goodman from Valange on, and, you know, his exact words were, it doesn't matter how thick you make the product, the performance of the lock is the same. So, well, a 6.5 or an 8 or a 9 or 10 or whatever you're going up to may last longer. It's just a matter of when, not if, right? So if I want to say it that way. So maybe the 3.2 fails in 1 month, and the 4 fails in 2, and the 6.5 fails in 4. And, you know, it's not a matter of when it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So
Yep.
You know, here's a better way. You know, obviously this is the best way. If you know, here's a professional crew. You know, Chris, you shared this picture with me, but this is a professional crew. I've never seen this done like this, but this is just amazing. I've seen some pours on site. Again, we did the one I wasn't at the one in our Calgary, but I was in the one in our Saskatoon branch, and it's a small pour, but it's you know, the little bit of leveling we did there for the 1 day of time that it took, and the 32 bags of leveler, you know, what that did to make our floor that much stronger and put us, you know, off on the right foot was well worth that 1 day of time, right? So, and from our side at Primco, yes, I know, you know, we carry obviously the Mapai product, but, you know, there's still a cost to it, and whether Mapai covers that or not, I don't know. I don't know if Brent's on here and he's gonna stroke that. But even if they aren't or weren't, you know, that cost is well worth it to just make sure that floor is set up for success right to begin with, right? So,
well, that project, yeah, I sent you the pictures of that. I've told the story a few times. That this is 3 towers all side by side in one development in a mall that was completely renovated. And you know, each tower has its own budget, right? So they watched the first tower, which has this system specified on it. They're going to have the base slabs, 40 stories, all poured to a rough concrete surface profile. You can see how bumpy it is there. That's the finished base slab. Anticipating they're going to pour a topping throughout the whole thing. These guys would do 12,000 square feet a week. Every 5 days they do a floor basically, and then move on to the next level. And when I took my straight edge there and looked at 4 or 5 of the floors, it was all a 1/16 over 10 feet. It was dead flat. And they said, really, you know, if we're going to pour to an 1/8 or a 3/16 over 10 feet, we may as well just pour a 1/16 over 10 feet and be done with it.
yeah.
I've heard now that this crew, I heard this 2 weeks ago, this crew has now been invited to go out to Toronto and do what they do there. I'm sure other firms are doing it already, but these guys have just gone from West Coast to back into Ontario.
Just got a good name for themselves.
Yeah, and all those 3 towers, they all went the same. The second tower, third tower, that means that the first tower made money. And you know, all the trades were smiling from ear to ear, saying this works. Now I know how to plan my work because I know it's going to be a flat substrate.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I will say the guy that came and did the one in Calgary, I wasn't there, but that's all that they do is just subfloor leveling. So I mean, it's good to hear that, you know, somebody can, you know, a company like that can continue just to do subfloor leveling. So it's good to hear that people are taking and doing it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be that busy. So I'm glad to hear that part at least.
Yeah, so this developer was spending the money to do it right. So it does make financial sense. You just got to plan it out and get everybody on board.
You know,
That's my straight edge right there. Yeah,
There you
6
go.
feet over 10 feet. Your SPC isn't going to have joints that break when you put it over a subfloor like that.
No, and now it allows you to really open up your options to whatever you want, right? So
yeah. Right. This is
so this is obviously another thing that we deal with in multifamily is just
welcome to the 35th floor.
You got the tarps going. I know we dealt with an issue out in Manitoba here, not, a couple of years ago now, well, before COVID now. So I guess time flies, but issues with it, with glue down gapping. And I can tell you, went to site, and this is kind of what we walked into. This isn't the pitch. This isn't my pictures, but this is basically the idea. And you just kind of go, well, I can tell you why, right? So obviously, and even SPC, and I know you kind of led off, Chris, by saying, hey, it's got a huge temperature range. I mean, they always recommend that you install it in the normal temperature, and then allow it to, it has a fluctuation range for sure, of a better fluctuation range than most other flooring, but you can't be installing it in a minus 20 degrees weather, that's for sure. So
that's what they should put in the guidelines and underline it.
For sure. Yeah, highlight, underline. So so here you got the propane heat. That's obviously, especially when you're talking glue down or anything, you're pumping a bunch of moisture into the air, which isn't helping with keeping your moisture issues down, that's for sure. And what's going on there with this, and then you've got obviously the forced air, the electric heat here, and there's just not enough. So you're going to have hot and cool points, and whether that's gluing it down that you're having, so you got to glue going in at different temperatures, because you got different temperatures in each area of the room, because you're not able to heat up that far bedroom or that far room, and it's at a different temperature, or whether you're putting a click in now that's all going in at a different temperature, and then you're heating it to a one temperature sooner or later, and how that all reacts together as it's all clicked together, is another issue that's happening for sure, because you've got different temperatures as you're installing it, and it's expanding and contracting differently. So you've got issues with that, with that as well, right? So,
I think one of the things that it would help if the construction groups that are dealing with sites like this, it would help them if they knew, for example, base slabs. If you're going to place a leveling compound, like a topping, like Mapei or Ardex, typically their products don't want to be installed over anything that is less than 10 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
They want it either equal to or above 10. And if it's an adhesive, now you've got the topping board, the adhesives don't want to be put over anything under 15 or 16 Celsius. Otherwise, you're not going to get the same bond as if you installed it the recommended range of sort of 18 to 29 Celsius. So just a point I wanted to make there.
Just to let you both know that you're at the 30-minute mark.
We're only a quarter of the way through our slides, Lee. So can we bump that to an hour? No.
Go for it.
This is storing material outside in these containers. So great idea for storing, but obviously you got to bring it in and acclimatize it to the proper temperature before you install. You can't just bring that into those forced air or propane heated areas and start installing, because you're going to have issues right away, because you're not letting the product acclimatize properly. So I never noticed the guys up on the top there doing the shingling before, in the first time I looked at this, but that's got to be a lot of fun. I bet you those shingles are going to tab up really good. So
those are the floor layers waiting for the rooms to warm up.
Yeah, exactly. They're sleeping up there. So then we got the temperature testing. So you should do 3 temperatures. You got obviously, and the relative humidity. So you got the subfloor, the product, the internal temperature. So you should be doing the 3 temperature testing, because everything needs to be within, a certain amount of degrees of everything else. You can't have your subfloor at 6 and your room at 30, and obviously I'm just tossing out numbers here, and your product's coming in and it's -10 coming, or -20 coming right out of that C can. So you've got a mixture of different temperatures that are happening. So you need to, take the temperature of everything and make sure that you're all within, a certain range of each other, and you're within the range of whatever the product recommendation is before you install it.
So tough question. How do you get the general contractor to turn the heat on and manage the relative humidity? Do you have anything to do with that as a distributor, or do you leave it up to the subtrade who's owed a lot of money by the general contractor to do the right thing?
Yeah, from the distribution side, I mean, we put it obviously in our instruction manuals, but being that we're not doing any installation, unfortunately, as much as I wish I could help with the retails and it
Just
really
suffer
falls
for it.
upon the retail and the installer to make sure that they're telling they're pushing back on the end user and the GCs to say, hey, we can't install. I was lucky enough, and I haven't seen this happen very often, but I can say, and he's unfortunately, no longer with us, but Gord Eckel over at Eckel Flooring, this was quite a few years ago, in project in Saskatoon where they were doing a polyfloor project with us, and it was for a school, and he actually did go to site and said, listen, like the ceiling wasn't done. There was a couple of heaters. It was cold. It was the fall. And he actually pushed back and said, listen, I'm not installing, and ended up giving back the job, just knowing that he wasn't going to be able to, stand behind the warranty on it. And I definitely, applauded him at the time for that, as much as that probably cost him some money, some upfront money for sure, long term, hey, he, his reputation, and that was more important to him than that job at the time. And, and I think for me, it was a big eye opener to say, hey, like, as much as it sucks to do that, it's the right thing to do, and it can be done. Right. So
that's the subtrade having the argument, whereas the
Yeah.
distributor, you sell it and then you wait for the fallout.
I mean, we help them with whatever we can, with, highlighting in the instruction manual as best we can certain points that obviously would lead to null warranty in that build. But in the long run, the GC was behind, and they were hell or high water. They were going to find somebody to install that flooring. So,
yeah.
So, I mean, you got to do your best to educate as best you can. But in the end, if you're not the end decision maker, you just got to choose, do you want to, how do you want to view it? Do you want to take the risk and do it, or do you want to stand up and just say, no, I'm not going to, right? So.
And I guess there's different types of owners. If you're going to get any change with the general contractor, it's who does the general contractor answer to? And if it's the owner, then the owner getting involved is what's going to get the heat turned on and warranty looked after. But that's not always the case, right? So somehow we have to empower the owner with the knowledge to make them confident when it comes to pushing back.
I know from our side as the distributor, again, like I said, we, in that particular case, we highlighted everything we could, and we sent it to the, again, I said it was a school, so we sent it to the school board. But when it came down to it, it was a contract that they kind of said, well, it was even out of their hands as the end user, which kind of felt at the time to me pretty crazy. This is going back 8 or 9 years ago, but yeah, they were letting it go and hoping for the best, I guess. So, which was silly, but we provided as much information as we can to show them here's kind of how it goes, right? So this is this is something here where this was installed when it was too hot, and then obviously it came down, and what happened was it cooled down at night, and there wasn't the proper heat in at night. It cooled down, and then the glue set up, and as it cooled down, the product shrunk, and then you end up getting this gapping at night that happened because the proper heat wasn't on in the building. So the product was shrinking, and then when it's set up overnight, this is how it's left. So something as easy as that is now cost something as easy as getting the heat turned on is now cost somebody, hundreds of thousands of dollars in having to fix this somehow. So
that's not just in Saskatchewan.
That's everything.
100,000 square feet in New Westminster here in British Columbia. Exact same picture throughout. Unbelievable.
This is caused by excessive heat through the the door, through this patio. This is one thing, and we face this with clicks as well. South facing windows and that are just really bad. On the glue, really all I can say is, using the right amount of glue and the right glue typically helps with these situations. You don't get this as much if you're using the proper glue. Obviously, proper window coverings are key. With the click, proper window coverings are key for sure, and expansion joints are ever important 100%. So I think in that case, it's you just got to make sure that you're pushing the homeowner or the GC, depending upon what you're going into, to make sure that they've got the proper window coverings and that are needed, right? So
I saw my first architectural spec that called for blinds on south-facing windows for an LVT installation. I've only ever seen it in manufacturer's installation guidelines before, but that was an interesting development.
Oh, that's really cool. I've never seen that, so that's good to know. This is one I threw this slide in. This is one, and I think this could be up for debate for sure, but I'm glad everybody's on mute, so it won't be. But one thing we get asked a lot, and I know this doesn't really have to do with multifamily, but I definitely want to throw it in here to go along with the gapping and not gapping. So just briefly, is just installing in cabins and stuff like that. So obviously clicks in any product in a cabin where you've turned off the heat is definitely a dicey situation. So the first thing I would say is just how is this space heated, and can you turn the heat up and down constantly in every room or not? And that should kind of be a bearer of how you have this discussion with your client, because I know again, I threw this kind of in, Chris, and I know it's not going to that multifamily, but I know it's definitely, when I'm talking about gapping and not gapping, it's definitely an issue that we see in the industry, and it's a question that gets asked all the time, especially when you talk about SPC being that -20 to whatever. So if you can't get your heat up at a constant temperature in every room, you need to make sure that you're using transitions to help with that on any sort of click product. If you can bring your heat up at a constant temperature, like we talked about before, and I thought it was kind of just nicely to put in here. My cabin's all baseboard heat, so we turn on one heater and everything rises at the same time, and away we go. So it's easier. But if you're doing a fireplace, obviously right in front of this fireplace is probably 100 degrees Celsius, and in this back far double room you see here, if you had a fireplace, it's probably still only +5, right? So you need to take those things into consideration as you're giving recommendations and as you're installing clicks and that anything that could possibly gap, right? So
well, multifamily's no different. That electric ceramic heater you had a picture of,
100%.
The doorway is 25 degrees Celsius, and the rest of the 1,000 square feet behind it's all 5 degrees.
Yeah, and that's exactly. I thought even though we were talking about kind of cabins, I thought it's definitely one question that I get asked a lot from our sales team, and I know I hear about it lots from the retailer side too, and yeah, I mean, it's one of those reasons why I'm not suggesting that you should use forced air or propane heat, but you need to take those things in consideration if you are, that you're not that one area is not the same temperature as the other area, right? So remove all the old adhesive and any other contaminants, making sure obviously that helps with making sure that the product, the adhesives got a good chance of succeeding, and the product's got a good chance of staying down properly. So curing agents and bond break, all that kind of stuff. So
just so any contractors on the call know that NFCA standards state that it is the general contractor's responsibility to remove all contaminants. Maybe they've got asbestos in them, but it's not the flooring trade's job to do that. They can do it as a billable extra if they choose to, but trade scope of work doesn't include removal of contaminants.
OSB is another one, like we just talked about, is it's something that especially on multifamily, lots of loose lays. I know lots of loose lays get installed right over top of the OSB. We see more and more clicks get installed over top of OSB. This does add another issue with deflection and with obviously trying to skim coat this out or flatten it out. So the problem with OSB is it's not, while it feels flat, it's not. So, if you are using it for any of the clicks and any of the loose lays, you still need to take that time to make sure that you properly skim coat it out. Obviously for glue down, this would not be recommended at all, which is why it is not a suitable subfloor for any glue down product, because the adhesive and the glue down do not work well together. So if you want to go over top the OSB, your only play is a click, in my opinion, or a loose lay. And in that case, you need to take into consideration other things like floor flatness and stuff like that. So
you just got to be careful. Whatever substrate you go over top of, that substrate must be approved as a floor covering substrate material, like we're seeing in the second picture there. That is stamped approved panel underlayment. OSB is not. No. You can get plasticized, and migration may affect your LVT or vinyl product, where chemicals transfer into the product that are just not compatible. So there's all sorts of reasons why you don't just go over a non-approved substrate.
Another thing we're seeing in lots of multifamily is subfloor deflection. So you're getting a lot of subfloor deflection. So even once you get that product straight on, and this is more for clicks, not for the glue downs, but when we're seeing for clicks is that we're getting a lot of subfloor deflection, and that deflection is causing those clicks to come apart. So we're having the joints separate typically on the ends. So it's something that you need to be aware of. So if you run into this situation, you either need to beef up your subfloor, because as you're starting to get your joists further and further apart, when you get into the 19-2 joists and stuff like that, you either need to add an extra layer, whether that's a layer of the approved subfloor like Chris was just talking about, whether that's a product like, a shout out to, the Acoustic guys, whether you add in something like that to also add for your sound dampening, or whether you add something, you need to be aware of that. And we're seeing failures that are happening due to that deflection. So even once you do get it flat to that 1/16 or 1/8 of an inch and 10 feet, just that subfloor deflection that's happening alone, a building code standard, I believe, is 1 inch and 30 feet of deflection. So just that alone, and the rigidity of some of the SPCs that are happening, and with how thin they are, they're kind of they're jumping around, and you're getting that unbuckling of the locking system. So something just to be aware of that's out there, and that is causing some issues in the market right now. And if you have those, definitely reach out to the manufacturer or reach out to your distributor. And there's ways that you can look at either, like I said, something like an Acoustic product, or you can add that on, or different items that you can add to kind of help beef up that floor. So kind of goes back to the old tile when you had to get to that, 1 1/4 inch thickness, right? So uneven subfloors and click, I think we kind of briefed on this, but this is what's happening when they're coming apart, and you're seeing them pop apart. Another thing is just expansion spacing is critical, especially on click products. And multifamily, there's lots of clicks going in there, but we're seeing a fireplace on one side and the patio door on the other side. So two walls like this, they're coming tight to both sides. You can't do that. That's you have to have that expansion spacing. So if you're coming tight to one side, you need to make sure you leave double the spacing on the other side. Obviously, my recommendation would be to leave the same spacing, and you need to do things like quarter rounds or end caps or different transitions. And while those don't maybe look the best in some people's opinion, the floor needs to be floating, hence the reason why it's called a floating floor. So you need to make sure you do that. As that product, especially obviously if you put it in there and it expands, you're getting buckling, and then you're getting it coming apart. So that expansion spacing is very critical. And if anything, I would say leave more than not enough, leave more than even you think, because it can make a big difference. I was in at a small little project where they never left enough expansion joint, caused some cracking of some laminate, ripped off the baseboards. They were able to cut it back and make it manage, but on some of the sides they did, but not everywhere. They came up against the tub, so they put it tight. And as it heated up and expanded in this bathroom, it ended up causing a pinch point on the other side. So you just need to make sure you leave a lot of it, the proper expansion joint, and if not just the proper, leave more than enough expansion
Tyler,
space.
what's the average size of an expansion joint these days? Expansion space at the perimeter?
3/8 of an inch.
Okay.
So, and we're recommending, especially now with a lot of the waterproof flooring that's going throughout, bathrooms and stuff like that. And I don't know if this is an industry standard, but I'll just say from our side, from Primco side, and if you are going tight to, let's say, per se, a tub and you're siliconing in there, you need to leave double the expansion on the other side, because, the product is going to expand. If it can't go one way, it's going to go double the other way. So you need to make sure you take that into consideration as you're doing things like that. If you
Oh. Can you hear me? Tyler? Lee, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Well, it looks like Tyler's frozen
Yeah,
up.
Tyler's frozen.
Okay, I wonder if he knows. I'll just send him a text here. Just hang on, folks. Let's.
Maybe he can just get on with his phone.
Yeah. So, never a dull moment. Tyler.
my apologies, my computer just died out of nowhere.
Oh, you're back.
I am back, but I do not have my PowerPoint anymore. So I was coming to the end of where I was anyway, I guess. But I just think on the expansion joint, again, if I can say that enough, one of the things is that just typically people end up not using enough, scared that they're not going to be able to cover it with their baseboard. I mean, most are using a nice thick 1-inch baseboard now. So, more is better than not enough. So.
Yeah, and you really got to think about it. I mean, I just came from an inspection where they had left their 1/4 inch or so expansion gap at the walls, but cut tight to the newel post for the stairs.
Yeah.
If you're going to do that installation correctly, you've got to leave a 3/8 gap around the newel post and talk to the customer about how you're going to cover up that ugly gap, and then watch the customer choose glue down after you explain.
Yeah, and I think that's where, as a distributor or retailer that's on here, not every single product category fits every single space. So you need to be aware of that, of that when you think about where clicks and that and things like, even sheet vinyl that was meant to be loose laid that came out of Europe. I mean, a lot of those are smaller spaces with with not such intricate floor plans as what we have in North America, right? So as you get into these more intricate floor plans and stuff like that, it causes issues with these click products and any of these floating products, and definitely lends itself back towards glue down. So as much as glue down, it seems like is more meant for commercial. I think it's something that we need to, as an industry, we need to look at, because there's a lot of benefits and value there, that's for sure. So
yeah, maybe we should open the floor up to any questions.
That's good.
Let's see, what is the maximum distance that you can install floating SPC before you add a transition? Good question.
Most of them are saying 50 by 50, but I mean, there's some that say endless. 50 by 50, is 2,500 square feet. So, that's kind of the what they're saying. I would say, again, a lot of what happens, I believe, and a lot of what we run into from a claim side, especially, is it's more based upon common sense. It's kind of more common sense. So obviously, the more intricate that you get, and some of these things that we talk about in in different areas with heating and contracting and different intricacies that go into different rooms. Like that's what you really need to pay more attention to is what is the intricacy of the room? What is it laid out like? You know, are you going into a, you know, maybe you have a staircase that goes down to the basement and like Chris said, and then how do you have to deal with that? Right. You know, how are you dealing with that? Because that's another beast in itself. And, you know, and then you got people wanting flush mount stair nose on the top, and that's got to be adhered. And now you've got an adhered point, and then you've got a, you know, big, huge island that kind of goes along with it. Right. So, you know, those are some of the things that while I think the question is more of a basic, hey, here's the number. You know, some of the things you got to think about is just all those intricacies that go into it, right? And that's where that expansion joint is so critical as you get into more intricate stuff, because as you get that floor bigger combined together, it's, you know, it's like are you talking about just a little tugboat, or are you talking about a huge cruise ship, right? So
I think we see a lot of LVT suppliers. They're putting in their installation guidelines sort of around 40 feet on the length. There's a maximum continuous run, and maybe around 35 feet on the width, across the width. But SPC is kind of billed as this product that's waterproof. Don't worry about RH, temperature can be all over the map. Obviously at that point, if you hear those three things, the stuff doesn't shrink or expand, but it does. So it's misleading.
It does, not as much as the other, but the other thing you got to take into consideration is not only does it do something, but your house does something too, right? So, and that's the part that I think people forget is they go, oh, well, the SPC doesn't do much, or in some cases, you're right, they'll say they don't do anything, which is again that's a false statement, but it doesn't do as much. But you have that, but you have it combined with what does your house do, and every house, you know. Obviously, again, I'm sitting in small town Porcupine Plain here of 800, you know, Saskatchewan. The -30 here affects a house differently than a 0 degrees does in BC, or a rainy January does in BC, right? So, you know, those are things that, you know, that aren't included in that standardized testing that's happening in a controlled room in some lab, right? So,
yeah.
So
good. Any other questions from the floor before we wrap things up? Because we have gone, we've gone almost a full hour. So I don't see.
I told you it would be an hour, Chris. I said when I talked to you, and you told me 25 minutes.
It's all my fault. I pepper you with questions. I keep rattling on here. So we'll wrap it up. Tyler, I know you're busy, so we thank you very much for sharing your experience.